This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. We begin this half hour with the Israeli Defense Forces pulling out of the Palestinian city of Jenin after 2 days of an intense counterterrorism operation. The Israeli move came after more than 50 Israelis were killed or injured from the terrorist operations out of Jenin in the past year. One Israeli soldier and 12 Palestinian militants were killed during the fighting. Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem to talk more about this operation and exactly what it's accomplished. So, Chris, what did the Israeli Defense Forces find and what did they accomplish?
Well, Ephraim, they found thousands and thousands of weapons. They found explosive devices, IEDs, ammunition, guns. They found at least 6 explosive manufacturing facilities to manufacture many of these IEDs and bombs. They found over 300 explosive devices in those facilities. They found more than a dozen hideouts and then operational situation rooms for these terror groups. Hundreds of thousands of shekels or dollars in terror funds, and they were likely supplied by Iran. They also found hidden weapons and underground shafts in a mosque and in civilian areas. And what this has accomplished is set back these terror groups dramatically. Many of these have been funded and supplied by Iran, as I mentioned, and that's part of Iran's strategy to open yet another front inside Israel to accomplish their ultimate goal of destroying the Jewish state.
Now, Chris, there was another terror attack in Tel Aviv. This one happened on Tuesday. What can you tell us about that, and is this a tactic being used by Palestinians?
Well, in Tel Aviv, there was a car ramming, and what that does basically is somebody's driving a car, and if they want to injure or kill a number of Israelis just standing on the road or somewhere, they just ram into them. The terrorists injured at least 7 people. 4 were seriously injured. And then after the ramming attack, he went on a stabbing attack. He just started, anybody that was in the vicinity started trying to stab. One of the victims was a pregnant woman who lost her baby due to that attack. The attacker was shot and killed by a civilian who happened to be in the area and happened to be armed as well. Hamas praised the attack and said it was the first response to the IDF operation in Jenin. And yes, it's a tactic that is used by the Palestinians, Ephraim. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I was here in Jerusalem, and I witnessed an attack just a few seconds after it happened. In fact, I heard the actual ramming of several people. I actually got out and began videotaping, but it's a very deadly tactic. You don't know when it's going to happen, you don't know where it's going to happen, and it's very random. There are ways to try to defend against that, and here in Jerusalem, you might find little barriers around, say, like a bus stop where people are typically waiting and just standing around. So that's, but it is a tactic used by Palestinians, and it's very, very, very hard to defend against.
Frightening indeed. Chris Mitchell, Bureau Chief, reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you so much, Chris. Here at home, despite soaring temperatures and severe weather, millions of Americans brave the elements to celebrate the 4th of July with parades, fireworks, and, of course, that famous hot dog eating contest. Caitlin Burke has this story.
In the Northeast Tuesday, people dodged raindrops to watch fireworks shows. This impressive display in New York City using 60,000 pyrotechnics. And in Washington, D.C., the president and his family among the thousands to show up for the show over the National Mall. Meanwhile, down south, heat advisories in effect for many states, with temperatures soaring into the triple digits and storms in some areas turning more destructive. Severe weather hit the Midwest the hardest. In South Dakota, hail and strong winds leading several fireworks shows to be postponed or canceled. Despite the less than ideal conditions across the country, 2024 presidential candidates still hit the campaign trail. Mike Pence braving 94-degree temperatures to march in an Iowa parade.
For me, it was vitally important to be here where the journey to the White House always begins, and to spend 2 miles, at times jogging uphill, to take our case to the people of Iowa.
And in New Hampshire, Perry Johnson dodging rainstorms to get his message out to the American people.
Politics is a sport in New Hampshire, and if you don't do well in New Hampshire, you're in trouble.
Meanwhile, despite a rain delay, another long-standing tradition took place on New York's Coney Island. Nathan's famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest. In the end, Joey Jaws Chestnut claiming his 16th victory. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
2 middle school teachers are suing their district and the state of California Board of Education over their school policy. They charge it requires staff to conceal students' gender identities from their parents. CBN's Billy Hallowell sits down with one of those teachers to talk about why she's fighting this in court.
Elizabeth Mirabelli says she and other teachers fear this gender mandate at Rincon Middle School in Escondido drives a wedge between kids and their parents.
We were told in meetings that we had to follow the policy strictly. We were told to say certain things, and we were told to withhold information from parents. And one teacher that works with me at my school asked a lot of questions about the policy. She spoke to her students about it, also questioning whether it was the right thing to do. And shortly after that, she was called into the office and she was reprimanded in writing by our principal and the assistant principal.
This reported punishment had a chilling impact on Mirabelli and other educators concerned about the policy.
I got pretty scared because I thought, they're going to write you up, that goes in your file, and you're supposedly violating, the rules of your contract.
At first, Mirabelli says no students made any requests to conceal their gender identities. That changed this year, however, when kids began asking her to do just that. That's when Mirabelli knew she needed help.
I realized quickly that I was in a really rough space because I keep in regular contact with parents. I like to keep them up to date on any concerns that I have, whether they're academic or behavior or social, emotional. But I knew that teachers were getting in trouble for speaking out.
Mirabelli contacted the Thomas More Society and attorneys filed a federal complaint against Escondido Union School District officials and the state board. Special counsel Paul Jonah says the case addresses 2 constitutional issues.
Basically, there's the parental rights aspect and there's the First Amendment rights of teachers. And both of them are at issue in our case. We're representing teachers, but again, they're severely undermining the rights of parents because they're leaving them in the dark. It's a blatant violation of one of the most basic and fundamental rights that our nation has recognized from its inception, which is the fundamental right of parents to raise their own children without government interference.
The Escondido Union School District issued a statement in the wake of the lawsuit affirming its commitment to providing a safe and positive environment and observing all federal and state laws. But Mirabelli believes that there are better ways to handle students struggling with gender identity, including school counseling and working alongside parents.
Watchful waiting is the safest approach. We don't want to drive a wedge, teach the child to hide and manipulate others. That's not healthy.
Jonah believes the lawsuit could help establish a precedent halting such policies.
The First Amendment rights of teachers is what we're focusing on. That's what our claims are based on. It's free speech and free exercise of religion, and those are very strong claims that we believe will ultimately prevail.
In the meantime, Mirabelli says she's on administrative leave for the rest of the school year, citing harassment and negative reactions from students and teachers who disagree with her legal fight. Billy Hallowell, CBN News.
Coming up, we're going to be joining the Guardians of the United States Space Force. See how the newest branch of the armed services is protecting America in space and on the ground. Stay with us. And welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. In late 2019, President Donald Trump signed a bill creating the United States Space Force. It is the first new branch of the armed services in more than 70 years. The Space Force is so new, not much is known about the mission of the Guardians. CBN News' reporter Mark Martin traveled to Colorado Springs to bring us this firsthand look.
The United States military plays a key role in protecting this country and world on the ground, water, and in the air. Now it's taking that mission to a new and even more vast frontier.
Space is becoming more and more important to the entire world. And the Space Force is here to protect our American interests and to preserve freedom in space.
Today, space is essential not only to our way of life, it's absolutely critical to the modern way of war. GPS, ATMs, cell phones, gas pumps, traffic lights, power grids.
I'm here on the ops floor of the 22 Space Operations Squadron, and the map behind me shows 7 remote tracking stations, which are equipped with antennas to enable space access.
We facilitate everything from space launch to disposition of end-of-life satellites and everything in between.
Major General Sean Bratton oversees the Space Training and Readiness Command. He sees this new branch as critical to America's future.
We've always flown these spacecraft. We didn't just invent them all with the stamp of the Space Force. We flew them as part of the Air Force. But there's been change recently. We've really seen potential adversaries move into the space domain, begin to threaten our capabilities. And I think that drove Congress to think through and finally decide to enact or create a new service specifically focused on the space domain.
The service's uses of its spacecraft include communication, GPS, and more military-specific needs.
The missile warning spacecraft, for example, so we can look and observe missile launches around the world, primarily to warn the joint force.
Bratton confirms the greatest threats in this arena are China and Russia.
Both have considerable space capability. We see them testing weapons now in the space domain, which is new behavior in the past kind of 10 to 15 years. And so I think that gives us cause for caution and causes us to really think about how do we protect and defend our capabilities in space.
Brad Bowman serves as Senior Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He says the space domain is hotly contested.
Even as China and Russia are fielding capabilities, combat capabilities in space to take out our satellites, they're simultaneously trying to take steps at the United Nations to bind our ability or to constrain, limit, reduce into our ability to do the same thing. It's good old Soviet hypocrisy at its best.
Lieutenant Colonel Brian Day oversees around 400 Space Force Guardians and government civilians operating close to 30 military communication satellites.
Whether it be operations in the European theater, the Pacific theater, in the Middle East, we're supplying all of the communications to ensure that all of those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians that are in harm's way have absolutely uninterrupted communications to execute their mission.
Part of the training here focuses on enhanced technical education. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Durand is the provost of the National Security Space Institute, which incorporates virtual reality and augmented reality into the curriculum.
Allow students to have more of a hands-on approach to what is inside of a satellite? What does it look like? What do orbits look like?
This virtual reality simulator allows the students to move in orbit. It helps them to visualize what actually happens when they send commands to a real-life satellite from the Earth. I also got to try my hands at augmented reality. So like in a class, you can just like expand it, you can contract it, you can look at the different dimensions of it. Basically, it causes the coursework to come alive.
Exactly.
Another aspect of preparing Guardians involves taking part in war game simulations.
If they do not have the opportunity to face a threat in a training environment, when they have to meet the real threat, they're not going to be as equipped.
Master Sergeant Joshua Mauser showed us a representation of what's called a direct ascent anti-satellite missile.
That is literally just a missile that is launched from the ground with the intention of striking an object that is orbiting in a low Earth orbit. It's a very serious threat.
Space Force Weapons Officer Captain Mike Foley describes the space domain as constantly evolving.
As the world gets more interested in returning to the moon, landing astronauts again on the lunar surface, that adds a whole new layer of complexity to the space domain, where now we're not just worried about our geosynchronous satellites in orbit, we're worried about the space all the way out to the moon.
And when you think of the moon, astronauts might come to mind, but don't confuse NASA with the Space Force.
NASA is the science side of things, if you will, the exploration. Our job is to protect and defend the domain, so that includes NASA.
The Space Force motto is Semper Supra, which means always above. And as space plays a growing role in everyday life, it becomes clear of the need for a military to keep its eyes on what's above in order to secure our freedom. Mark Martin, CBN News, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Still ahead, an NFL player who helped to renew his mother's home is now helping to bring clean water to those in need in the African nation of Zambia. We're going to let you hear from Kelvin Beacham when we come back.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't.
Welcome back. You likely heard the story of Arizona Cardinal offensive tackle Kelvin Beacham helping to renovate his own mother's home some years ago. But today we're looking at more of his work off the field, helping to deliver clean water wells to areas in desperate need in Zambia, thanks to some guidance from World Vision.
When I sat down with World Vision, the biggest conversation and the biggest, I guess, point that I kept driving home was I want to go where the greatest need is. And Zambia just happened to be where the need happened to be the greatest. My name is Kelvin Beacham, World Vision Celebrity Ambassador, 12-year NFL vet. Why clean water wells is because, for one, water is freedom. You can't get to some of the other issues that are surrounding some of the families and some of the challenges without actually talking about access to water. We talk about the symptoms quite a bit. We talk about diseases, we talk about diarrhea, we talk about malnutrition. All those things stem from clean water. Seeing Susan trying to pick up the jug of water and then putting that jug of water on my head, that was the experience that, for one, I probably never forget. To realize that's how somebody has to go and fetch water, that experience is seared into my mind. But it's not only seared into my mind, it's seared into my soul. She has no water. She walks 3 times a day. The jug is, you know, water. So that's a weight that's moving around consistently on top of your head. She has a baby on her back, and she's doing that 3 times a day. And then considering that there's flies, there's dead cows that have fell into that water, like, to realize some of the issues, there's snakes in that water, to realize some of the issues that are going on with that bucket at that time, you realize that the impact that you're making is literally giving freedom and liberating someone who had no liberation. It's giving somebody and granting somebody the opportunity to have access to life through water, a very basic human need. After being here and after seeing it, you're realizing that God didn't send you here, He didn't send us here, you know, just to see the work, but actually do something about what we were seeing. You know, one of the things I was praying yesterday was just, Lord, let me be where my feet are. Wherever my feet are at that particular moment, wherever we happen to be, whatever time of day it is, just help me to be present and see what you want me to see, feel what you want me to be, what you want me to feel, be convicted where you want me to be convicted, be inspired where you want me to be inspired, but wherever I'm at that moment, just be where my feet are. The fundraising amount was $15,000. That was the price of a well that serves about serves about 300 people, 2,800 gallons of water. So to be able to raise that money, to be able to get here to Zambia, to be able to know that we hit that marker was incredible. It was amazing just to feel the ownership, the energy, the smiles. And I think this is a different type of smile than just, hey, I'm happy, but just overjoyed with the ability to have access to water. For me, it was a different type of high. There was no water that comes in the house. You know, I think meeting people where they are is what Jesus did in many different respects. So I think, you know, in that respect, it's meeting people exactly where they're at, and then being able to evangelize in a very organic way.
Thank you so much.
I've been blessed to come from what I thought was poverty in Mahia, Texas, and then you see and experience things on a global scale, and you realize how good you had it. So for me, it's bigger than football. It's bigger than just living a very simple life. But it's being able to expose myself to what the world has to offer and how some folks on this planet are really dealing with significant challenges. I don't think you can live a faith-filled life or Christ-filled life or gospel-filled life and see issues that are going on across our planet and sit silent.
As you heard, Kelvin Beacham serves as an ambassador for World Vision. I've had the opportunity to travel with the organization, and it does some incredible work. Coming up, we're going to share some good news from the annual SoCal Harvest Crusade, plus your Wednesday Word. Stay with us.
The CBN News app. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News. Because truth matters. Get the CBN News app today.
It was a taste of heaven at this year's SoCal Harvest Crusade as thousands gave their lives to Christ. Pastor Greg Laurie reports nearly 4,000 people made that decision. The two-night event was held last weekend at the Honda Center in California. The arena was packed with more than 16,000 people each night, with more than 47,000 viewing online. The annual crusade has been led by Pastor Greg Laurie for the last 34 years, with 121 crusade events all around the world. Time now for your Wednesday Word, and today's word is victory. The dictionary defines it as the act of defeating an enemy. So know this, God has given you a life of victory. You actually aren't fighting for it. You have it in Him. One songwriter puts it like this: I know who I am. God wrote it in His plan. My name is victory. With that word, I encourage you to make this a marvelous Wednesday and a victorious rest of the week. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.